Oh, all right, everyone. This is Ash. Welcome back to the King's Speech. Apologize if I sound really tired, but yeah, I feel really tired. So a few quick things before we dive into the video proper and start talking about all stuff One Piece. So I'm downloading a channel update right now. I'll kind of go into it into depth a little bit more about this stuff. But the long and short of it is, I'm taking a brief hiatus from the channel. Right now, potentially until the end of April. But that's kind of in flux right now. I'll depend on a number of different factors. Like I said, look at the channel update for kind of more information on that. But yeah, I have been feeling kind of burnt out a little bit lately, so I feel like I need a break to kind of recharge my creative juices a little bit. And so hopefully this downtime will let me get back to some projects I've been kind of had sitting on the back burner for far too long. So yeah, we'll see how that all goes. Hopefully, this will be exactly the cure I need for what ails me. With that said, I should also touch on this as well before we get into the review proper. I don't want to shake the table. I don't know what direction these videos are going to be taking in the future because I think everyone in the fandom's kind of aware of the recent, hubbub that happened around the Rurouni Kenshin exhibition, and Oda's kind of glowing comments about Nobuhiro Watsuki, a convicted pedophile. Uh, I'm still kind of processing, thoughts, feelings, and everything else, and I definitely have words I want to say, like art stuff I want to say and get out regarding my feelings about it, but I'm gonna wait until I can put them all down properly and articulate them in the way that I want to, because I don't want to just put out a video talking about it that doesn't really touch up on what I feel like a lot of the core issues surrounding it are. But I think I can comment and say I'm a little bit frustrated how quickly the outrage over from the One Piece fandom kind of died over with how with Oda's with regards to Oda's comments and like how much of a proponent of Watsuki he is. But like I said, like it's a topic that requires a bigger conversation than the one I have the capacity for right now. So I'm gonna try to gather thoughts during this break from the channel and try to figure out what direction Shape is gonna take until then. Until then, the only step I can think of to take right now is at least to stop supporting Ichiro Oda financially. So as long I'm gonna be reading the free One Piece chapters, which at least will kind of mitigate any kind of financial support I send his way personally. But I'm not, I haven't even been supporting him that much, anyways. It's not like a huge thing for me. I haven't been buying any of the recent volumes. I haven't really bought figures or anything for a while as well. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe people think I'm sounding like a hypocrite even though I'm doing these videos and still kind of expressing frustration, disappointment with what Oda's done. But honestly, I can't really control any of that. I'm gonna try to come up with some thoughts regarding it. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's honestly that's part that's part of the factor and the reason why I'm kind of taking this break in this channel is kind of deciding the future direction. What I want to promote and what I want the focus of this channel to be. But again, right now it's kind of all nebulous. But I thought I'd put it out there. Uh, I should also mention, I guess, with regards to that, what is going to be then the state of these videos going forward. I'll probably still try to stick to it, depending on how I feel. Just doing weekly reviews at least. So there's at least one critical voice out there talking about the series and Wano, because I know at least a few of my friends and mutuals are kind of interested in my thoughts on it. So it's a low effort ordeal for me. So I'll keep doing those. Just because while I'm thinking about what other things to do. But that said, apart from that, I haven't made any firm decisions past that. So we'll honestly have to see. Like, I just don't know what to say or do, but yeah, I have to say it. I am disappointed. That thing is the only thing I can say. That said, let us dive into this chapter. 1002 in this new format of me just doing a review for rather than reacting. And honestly, it feels like that was a good decision to do for this chapter specifically, because there isn't really that much to talk about. Like, it was pretty much a chapter chock full of fighting. And I was kind of tempted to just do like a 10-second video of me going, you know, props to Oda for having a surgeon, a rubber man, a samurai, and Magneto fighting a dragon, and have that somehow be one of the most boring things in the entire series. But I figured I might as well actually do, more concrete thoughts, even though most people probably just ignore what I have to say anyway. But yeah, so apart from that, like, that honestly is kind of my thoughts though. In that, yeah, I can't even say, that, oh, the art kind of saved it, and there's great panel work in this chapter to kind of make up for the lack of emotional investment, because it was so messy reading this chapter. Like, there was so much going on in each panel, and each panel was so overcrowded. It was kind of hard to really be invested in the action, kind of keep clear focus on it at any point. Like, there's just, like, it just felt very, very choppy. Like, I'm not an artist, I don't really have an eye for these things, so I can't be like, point out to specific, techniques, whatever, try to support my arguments in any way. But that's just my opinion of putting it out there. It's was super messy and it's not as clean as as Oda's old style used to be, which is a little bit disappointing. But again, I could have also overlooked that if the fight was at least a little bit interesting, but it didn't really feel like any of the characters were really struggling or really, kind of giving it their all in any of these fights. Like, yeah, you have what Kaido doing, his Windblade Gus, and Choro just kind of casually chops one off to the side. Shiro, which I guess is bad, that's like, oh yeah, sure, he does it. And Kid just is like, oh, who cares if you cut off my arm, it's floating anyway. And he, slams Kaido into the thing and everything, but so I guess I'll go into some of the more minor complaints I have before talking about like the more broader criticisms I've had kind of throughout this arc. So the one big thing, which I'm not sure if this is just like something lost in translation or just something that's supposed to be unclear right now, but when Kaido goes like, oh, enough of these tricks, so you've learned how tough my defense is, it seems you're not just mindless fools relying on guts to win. So this has been kind of like a matter of great debate within the fandom, where they're like, oh, where everyone and his grandfather was kind of theorizing that, oh, Kaido's an actual dragon who ate the Oni fruit, or Kaido's a dragon who ate some other mythical fruit, and he's an actual biological dragon, blah blah blah. And they're kind of pointing to that being the reason why, he's considered the strongest creature, or why he's been so undefeatable up to this point, with his titanium skin, and why, blades have been shattering, etc., is because, his dragon scales make him impenetrable. And that never really sat right with me as a theory, especially considering when it's like, oh, the Marines, also tried to execute him, also tried to defeat him, everything like that. Because especially now, alright, if he was an actual dragon, okay, maybe I could have bought that at this point in the story, being like, okay, if he's an actual dragon, his scales would be the actual things. When they tried to execute him, it bounce off, makes sense. Now that we got confirmation that he does indeed have a mythical fruit, and Oda's confirmed this in an SBS, that it's the mythical, like fish fruit, model Seiryu, which is the Azure Dragon model. So we can finally put those stupid ass fucking annoying. Oh my god, guys, Kaido's an actual fish. Does this mean we're gonna get a water devil fruit? Oh, does this mean we're gonna like we can put all those stupid ass theories to rest, and just acknowledge the fucking riff on the myth about the dragon, the carp climbing the gate, becoming a dragon. All that aside, confirmation that Kaido does have a dragon devil fruit. It's not just he's an actual biological dragon. If the Marines were going to execute him, they would have put sea stone cuffs onto him like they did with Ace when they were about to execute Ace. So I find it hard to believe that, the dragon scale is what gives Kaido his invincibility, and that's why no one's been able to kill him. When I have to assume there's been moments where he hasn't been in his dragon form, hasn't been afforded the defense of having it, that would have stopped a blade or something from cutting him. So him kind of like trying to imply that, oh yeah, I have been undefeated up to this point because my dragon height is so tough. That's why no one was able to kill me. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And this kind of goes back to another criticism I've had where we're acting like, Luffy's like, oh, I mastered this super secret Wano samurai haki. No one else knows about this. Only the people of Wano know about it. And like other YouTubers have already pointed out that we've seen the admirals use a version of this when they did, what they call the Macarena dance at Marineford, where they kind of created the hockey shield around it. And we know that Raleigh and probably Sentomaro also have access to this type of hockey. So I find it, again, kind of unbelievable that no one else Kaido has fought. All these legends of Garp, Rocks, Whitebeard, Roger. I find it hard to believe that none of them have had the same type of hockey, or like this advanced level of hockey that would be able to hurt Kaido in his dragon form. And it's kind of weird for Oda to keep insinuating that Oden was somehow also special with regards to this, and like somehow he was like a head and shoulders above all these other legends because he had mastered this type of hockey. This feels like Oda's just making up shit as he goes, and he hasn't really fully thought this through, fully thought through all the implications of it. But again, that's just me having minor criticism. Like, if it ends up the Kaido's being like, oh, yeah, once Luffy just punches him really hard with the new hockey and bypasses his scales, he's gonna win just because he's so great and no one ever thought of doing that before. I'm gonna be kind of annoyed. I'm honestly not gonna lie. I'm gonna be annoyed if it's only Luffy that does it. Because I did, for the long time ago, I theorized, and I still do to an extent hold to this idea that we're eventually gonna see, Gear 4 Nightmare Luffy making a comeback. We're gonna see him infused with the shadows of the other supernova, and he's gonna kind of use all their hockey all together to kind of land finally the killing blow on Kaido. If that happens, a little bit more forgivable with how this has been being played. But yeah, maybe this is me being nitpicky, but this does feel like Oda's just kind of like, what the hell's the word I'm looking for? I want to say farting out of his ass, but that doesn't sound right. Talking out of his ass with Oda's what he's doing with this. So I hope there's like some kind of reverse or something else coming, because if that is going to be the thing, we'll have to have more concrete thoughts later when I'm not tiredly talking about that. But that was like the one kind of big nitpick I had. I was going to comment on, Killer's mega sites that were just cutting through Kaido. But again, a lot of people on Twitter kind of commented, noted, because it's Scyther Sonic, and you see him spinning his little sides quickly before he attacks him. He's probably doing some kind of Sonic attack. So it's meant to be like a mirage look of him cutting through Kaido. So that was alright, like whatever. I will say, I appreciate that Big Mom is finally kind of being positioned as the threat she always should have been. With her just doing like the lightning strikes left and right, holding the flaming sword in her hand and everything. I like that she's finally being given the credit she's due. But it also feels like, a little bit too little too late at this point, because Oda really has kind of done her dirty with how badly he's treated her compared to the other emperors with the amnesia, with the whole, starvation bullshit, just with all the problematic aspects of like her portrayal in general. And I'm also semi biased about it because I fully still do believe that Big Mom is eventually going to get redeemed and she's not really going to be taken down in Wano. I don't buy that for a second. So for me, it's kind of like, so I think I'm kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop to see, like, all right, Oda's having Big Mom give us a good show now, but is he going to do something like have her amnesia come back again or have her be clowned on again in some fashion? Like, I can't shake that feeling that that's going to happen again, which kind of diminishes a little bit of it. But again, minor thing. We'll see how it goes. Which brings me to think the only thing that piqued my interest and curiosity in this chapter and kind of fed fuel to my personal theories. Anyone that follows me on Twitter should be very familiar with this. I might have mentioned a few times on these reactions as well. But I've been kind of talking about the whole cursed sword aspect and the idea of like, Zoro kind of finding closure with Kuina's death and finally being able to kind of like sense the personalities of his swords. And I specifically mentioned with regards to the Water Witch Ichimonji, because out of all of his swords, that's the only one where he's never commented on its personality. Like with Shusui, he's like, oh, this one's a problem child. I'll need a lot to tame it. Same with Enma, where it's like, oh, Enma does whatever it wants to, and it needs a sword wielder with a strong personality to kind of contain it. Same with the Sandai Katetsu, where he's just like, oh, it's a problem child. They'll cut whatever it wants to unless its owner tells it to. Things like that. Like he's always mentioned like feeling something from his swords, and the Wado Ichimonji is the only one in which that hasn't been true. And I've kind of posed like different reasonings and theories for the reasons why. It just hit me that could easily be explained as Zoro's just had it the longest, so he's just had time to tame it or like get used to his personality or whatever. Which could be true, but I'm looking for Zoro development, so I'm going to keep theorizing. But the fact that Kaido's kind of able to sense, Oden's presence within Enma, and he's able to say like, oh, there's something off about that sword, why can I sense his presence in it? Really fed fuel to my theory of like, Wano's finally going to be, or Zoro's finally going to be able to communicate with his sword, with the Wado Ichimonji like his other swords. So we'll see if that comes to pass. And I think that also ties into my other theories of, the whole, what was it? The samurais of Ringo, like being buried with their swords, carrying it, from the day they were born. And the idea that we could potentially see, their ghosts or their spirits coming back to lend a hand to take down Kaido and kind of reclaim Wano. So that fed fuel to the fire. We'll see if that actually goes anywhere, if this is just kind of like a one-off. Zoro also cutting the horn again makes me even more certain that we are going to see him losing control at some point and just slicing clean through Onigashima. We'll see if that actually does happen, though. It's kind of 50-50 at this point, but we'll see. Again, just wanted to put it out there. Apart from that, not really too much to comment. The whole, Big Mom doing the Enel face didn't really land. I think with Enel it worked because it was kind of like a doy moment for the entire fandom, where I think none of us ever considered the fact that Robbie or Luffy would be immune to his attacks. And I think that's because Oda did such a good job of establishing Enel as a credible threat and just like how powerful he was and like how invincible he was. The fact that he kind of did, the red herring, the misdirection with that, I think that's why when Enel does the face of Luffy getting shocked, like having no impact, it worked as a comedic moment. Whereas with Big Mom doing it, it feels more like the opposite, went the opposite direction of being like, Dedoy, like, what? Why wouldn't you remember that he's rubber and lightning doesn't affect rubber? Like, it just doesn't land with the same impact again. like I don't want to get into the whole debate about this because I know there's a whole debate with fans like kind of debating the veracity of how much of a threat Kaido actually is. Like, why does he keep going to his dragon form when it doesn't seem like it's actually doing anything? And people are kind of debating, like, oh, well, his dragon form is still the most destructive. Oh, he's got such powerful attacks just because these guys can overcome it doesn't mean it's something to sniff at. But that's kind of the point, though. Like, yeah, Kaido's dragon attacks might seem more impressive if we saw it, attacking the general populace, if we saw the impacts on, say, the citizens of Wano, if he's rampaging there, then it might be like, oh yeah, this is a more credible threat. We need to stop. We need to take it seriously. But on the rooftop against, four fighters that are just kind of casually backfisting it away and dodging around it and just being like, oh, I'm getting through guts. It kind of does diminish Kaido as a credible threat, which kind of brings me to the last little point before I wrap this up, which is I don't know what Oda is stalling or waiting for, but it's kind of patently clear to me that he is waiting for or stalling for something with regards to Kaido's hybrid form, because Kaido's been kind of swapping back and forth between like his dragon form and his regular form, even though he's supposedly now facing a credible threat or challenge in the form of the supernovas, who might be finally able to grant him his wish. And if I was being charitable, I could write it off as being like, oh, well, Kaido wants to, make the battle last as long as possible because he's a meathead. He wants to like savor every moment of it. But I don't feel like getting clowned on and seeing your attacks doing basically next to nothing would be fun for a meathead. I feel like he would go into his hybrid form, and start to kind of like slowly start boosting up from there to kind of make the fight a little bit more fun and kind of start pushing the supernova to their limits to see what their the topmost skills are. And I don't know why Oda is stalling for it. Like, I have a theory that I'm hoping is true and like leads to the reasons why he's stalling for it. But and it's not just, I should also point, it's not just Kaido as well, because it's also, Jack as well, who we haven't seen go into his hybrid form. Even though he was losing in the battle against Cat Viper and Dogstorm in their Sulong forms. Even when it was even on Zone, it was taking him 10 days to actually, try to take down the Minx. He eventually had to resort to using gas to take him down. During none of those times, he never went into his hybrid form, which always stuck out to me as being an odd thing to do. Like, because if you wanted to take someone down, and given that we know the hybrid form is the strongest form a Zoan user has, which is like the maximum strength, mobility, attack, everything like that, why wouldn't you pull that form out? And it's like if you were in a desperate situation. And my going theory has always been that's because Kaido and his goons are like the Awakened Jailer Beast from Impel Down, where, they could go into Awakened form where they'd get, the super advanced recovery, the super advanced healing, and everything else, but they basically become like mindless beasts that wouldn't really be able to function rationally. So I wonder if that's why they're waiting to use it as their last kind of like ace in the hole, because if they go into that form, they would lose control and just kind of keep rampaging, kind of like the untrained like Sulong Minx would. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's what it's going to be or if it's going to be something else with regards to that. I'm going to admit, if it turns out the Kaido's just like, oh no, Oda's just like, oh no, I just wanted to tease you guys and wait for, for no reason, just to drag it out for as long as I could before I did it. It'd be a little bit disappointing, but not really out of character for Oda. Oh, one more thing. Already rambled for so long, but I feel like I should address this. So the reason I feel like the fights don't really do anything for me, something I've mentioned on Twitter before, with regards to One Piece specifically, where I said that, in the series, the fights are more about, the reasons people are fighting, like what they're fighting for, who they're fighting for, more so than the fights themselves that make them, that make them so appealing, like make us emotionally invested in them. Like if you look at a lot of the fights in the series that are rated as being, kind of the cream of the crop, you have something like Luffy versus Crocodile, which in my opinion was one of the best fights. Again, because Alabasta I think was one of the arcs where Oda did the emotional investment really well and correctly. Again, like Luffy versus Usopp being another good example, because we're so emotionally invested in both of those characters. I think that's why people say it's a standout fight with regards to the series, even though it's so relatively short and not super high stakes compared to the rest of the series. And again, as much as I have problems with this one, Luffy versus Sanji, another one that comes brought up with regards to that. But the reason I bring that up with this specifically is that apart from Luffy, who's even him, who's like connection, whose emotional investment in the fight's kind of like tenuous at best, given like his actions throughout the rest of this arc. Law and Kid, like, there's no real reason for me to be emotionally invested in them fighting Kaido or having a desire to take him down, because there's no real, reasoning for why they want to take him down. Like, Law's kind of doing his thing of being like, oh, I want to find out more about the Poneglyphs. I want to find out more about what the name means. Which you could kind of be like, yeah, maybe that's his motivation for fighting Kaido, is he has to get he has to find the last road poneglyph and everything. That's kind of weak sauce, though, honestly, for thinking about it. Like, it's not really something personal he has against Kaido. Like, Kaido's more an like an annoying obstacle with regards to that dream, rather than like an actual barrier or something he has to overcome to achieve his goal or dream for the thing. Same with Kid. This is where I'm like kind of more disappointed in Oda with Kid specifically, because Oda and like that, because I was always ambivalent about Kid, because I'm like, yeah, he's your typical edge lord who's like, oh, look at how cool I am. I have a punk rock aesthetic. Oh, I don't care what anyone thinks. I murder people. Like, just typical edge lord. And then we had the one chapter in Wano where you see him kind of expressing genuine like anger, frustration, and care for Killer. When he finds out, like when he's questioning, like, oh, what happened to you, Killer? What do they do to you? You always hated that laugh. Why are you laughing like that? And that was the moment where finally, like, I became interested in Kid as a character. I'm like, all right, we finally see what he cares about, who he cares about. Now I want to see like more of him. I want to see him develop more. And rather than doing that, Oda just had him be like later, and then he shows up 2 weeks later at the raid, and then he gets thrown into the fray again, and he's just kind of like a background character again, which feels like a hugely wasted opportunity. And the thing that frustrates me the most about that specifically as well is that Oda had kind of like the perfect plot line, to kind of bring up and address with regards to Kid, which was the whole, was the whole smile fruit thing. And you could have very easily made Kid's motivation be that, I'm going to get revenge on Kaido for having fed Killer, this fruit, that made him self-conscious about his laugh. No one does that to my friends. You could have had him be like, oh, Kaido tortured my crew. I want to get revenge for everything he put them through. But Oda seems to have just kind of like swept all that under the rug and gone like, oh, the rest of Kid's crew is fine. They just decide to be like all supportive of Killer and just do the same laugh as him, so he doesn't feel self-conscious. Which was like, yeah, great hurrah, Rie moment, like great, male bro bonding moment. It kind of then undercuts Kid's whole like emotional stakes and investment in this arc. Was again, now Kid's like, oh, I want to take down Kaido just because I need to. It's like, oh, I want to be the one to take him down. Yeah, I like the shallow level. Ha ha ha! Look at Law, Kid, and Luffy fighting like three little kid brothers. Like ha ha ha. All that aside, like Oda hasn't really done much to establish why Law or Kid could even be considered serious rivals to Luffy for, Pirate King contenders. And I think that's one of the biggest missed moments in the series thus far, just kind of relegating them to being Luffy's backup rather than, as actual legitimate threats and contenders to his claim for Pirate King. So, yeah, honestly, I don't want to get too in depth into it because I'll just start rambling on and on and on. Maybe I'll do like another video about it at some point, more in depth. But there's just no, I just don't have any emotional investment in this fight, which just makes it harder for me to care about, Kaido getting punched in the face or getting slammed with this cool attack. Because once that moment of like, oh, ha ha ha, like, getting his just desserts, like, oh, what a cool attack, kind of wears off, there's just nothing left behind to fill it. Like, there's nothing for me to, like, ruminate or chew on or think about, that's meaty or filling or concrete in any way. It's just kind of like, once that moment passes, like, yeah, it drifts out of my memory. Like, I'm not going to be rethinking about this fight in the same way as, say, I would, against Luffy against Crocodile, Luffy against Usopp, like all the examples I brought up before. Like, there's nothing that makes it stand out to me and makes me want to revisit it. So we'll see. Like, again, I'm kind of hoping that Oda does eventually have the raid fail so we can kind of hopefully build some sort of emotional investment for this arc. But honestly, I'm not gonna keep my hopes up. We'll see what happens. That said, I'm very tired, so I'm gonna cut it off there. Yeah, as always, like I said, channel update has more news about the other stuff, so take a gander at that. I'll try to get the review out earlier this week for the next chapter coming out, but don't hold me to that. Really, it's kind of going to be touch and go depending on everything that's happening with regards to that. But that said, really do appreciate everyone's support during all of that. I know I haven't been super. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry, my brain is so dead. Appreciate you all, love you all. That's all I want to say. Thank you for joining me. Hope you like this new review format. If there's anything you want me to change, switch around, do, let me know in the comments below. As always, if you like my content, videos, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It always helps. And until next time, this is Ash. Talk to you all later.